I'm going to talk about Roger Bannister for the next 3 minutes 59.4 seconds. So Roger Bannister was the first person to actually break the 4-minute barrier in the mile. And the record stood for 46 days after he did it. So he's the first person to do it. And then hundreds of people have done it afterwards. Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute barrier in May of 1954. At the time, he was actually studying medicine. And on a cinder track with like huge spikes, with like leather spikes with hobnail, like proper spikes. I think it's still a barrier for people to actually break. 4 minutes seems to be the barrier that every middle distance person wants to break. I have treated a world record holder in the mile, which is Eamon Coughlin. He ran indoors 3:49. With the amount of people that have broken the 4-minute barrier, and I think still it's like, oh, the sub 4 minute. And John Travers became the first Irish person on Irish soil to break the 4-minute barrier indoors in February just gone, 2018. He ran 3:59, and it was such a big deal for the first Irish person. Even though Eamon Coughlin ran 3:59, it's still like 60 years later, it's still that 4-minute barrier that people want to break. And I think it's recognisable for everybody. Like, it's oh, what do you run for the mile? Oh, 3:50 whatever. It's 3, and everybody thinks, Jesus, that's brilliant, because they have this in their head that 3 whatever for the mile is groundbreaking. And I suppose Roger Bannister made 3 minutes for the mile normal. My PB, I don't even think I have a PB for the mile. I'm guessing it's probably 4:20 something ish, 4:30 maybe. I think maybe the 4-minute barrier was actually more impressive than the first person to break 10 seconds for the 100 metres. What's interesting as well, that Marcus O'Sullivan, he's Irish, has ran 101 times under the 4-minute barrier, which less than a handful of people have done that in the world. I'll finish on this stat. More people have climbed Mount Everest than have ran under 4 minutes for the mile. So here's Roger Bannister running sub 4 for the mile for the first time in the history of the world.
As the gun fired, Chris Brasher went into the lead and I slipped in effortlessly behind him, feeling tremendously full of running. My legs seemed to meet no resistance at all, almost as if impelled by an unknown force. We seemed to be going so slowly. Impatiently, I shouted faster, but Brasher kept his head and didn't change the pace. 3/4 of a mile, the effort was still barely perceptible. The time was 3 minutes 0.7 seconds, and by now the crowd was roaring. A 4-minute mile was possible. Somehow, to do it, I had to run the last lap in 59 seconds. Chataway led round the next bend, and then I pounced past him at the beginning of the back straight, 300 yards from the finish. I had a moment of mixed joy and anguish when my mind took over. It raced well ahead of my body and drew me compellingly forward. I felt that the moment of a lifetime had come. Those last few seconds seemed never-ending. A faint line of the finishing tape stood ahead as a haven of peace after the struggle. I leapt at the tape, like a man taking his last spring to save himself from the chasm that threatens to engulf him. My effort was over. and I collapsed almost unconscious with an arm on either side of me. It was only then that the real pain overtook me. I knew I had done it before I even heard the time. I felt as if I was too close to have failed.